All right, you guys, so you should be done with your warm-up by now or close to it. So I'm going to put the answers up here, and I'm going to give you about 30 seconds to check your work and make sure you did them all correctly. There should be a 1/4 x here. It kind of got cut off by the box. All right, so solving for y, that's a skill we did back towards the start of the school year. So hopefully this looks a little familiar to you. You'll be using it all day today. So remember back when we did this and I told you we want to get in the habit of writing the x term first. So that's what that's what you're going to see today. That's why we needed the x term first, because of what we're getting into today. Okay, so today we're going to talk about slope-intercept form. So far we've learned about point-slope form. So slope-intercept form is called slope-intercept because it gives us the slope and it gives us the y-intercept. Okay, so mx plus b, where m is the slope and b is the y-intercept. Okay. All right, so our first skill, we have to identify what the slope is and what the y-intercept is from an equation. So slope-intercept form is y equals mx plus b. So y is our isolated variable. So A already has y isolated. So we can go ahead and identify our slope and our y-intercept. So here our slope is 3, which you could write as 3 over 1. Remember, so when we do rise over run, it's the same thing. And then our y-intercept is 4, or as a point, 0, 4. Okay? All right, so B. B doesn't have y by itself, so we can't identify what the slope and the y-intercept are yet. So our first step is to get y by itself by subtracting our 3x from both sides of the equal sign. So that leaves us with y equals negative 3x plus 2. Again, this is where we want that x term first so that we can easily identify what the slope is. All right, so here, our slope is going to be negative 3. Again, you could write it as negative 3 over 1 if you preferred. And then your y-intercept is 2, or as a point, 0, 2. And so once we get y by itself, that's when we can start finding slope and y-intercept. All right, one more over here. So this one, there's a couple steps to getting y by itself. First, we're going to subtract 3 from both sides. So we're left with 4x minus 7y equals 0. Then I'm going to subtract my 4x. So we have negative 7y equals negative 4x. Divide by negative 7. Y equals a positive 4 over 7x. All right, so now here our slope. Slope is, again, the number with the x. So our slope is 4 over 7. And here our y-intercept, well, if there's nothing being added after the x, then what number is actually there? A 0. So our y-intercept is the point 0, 0. All right? All right, so now we're going to use this information and we're going to graph with it. So here, A of our graph, we first need to look and see, is y isolated? And in this problem, it is. So now I'm going to identify my slope and my y-intercept. Okay? So in order to graph this, you're going to start by graphing your y-intercept. So your y-intercept, you go on your y-axis to negative 4. This is a positive slope, so we know our line needs to be going in this direction once we apply the slope. It needs to be going up and to the right. So from my y-intercept, from my point here at negative 4, I'm going to use my slope. My slope is 1 over 3, so that means I'm going to rise 1, and then I'm going to run 3, and I'm going to run 3 in the right direction because it is a positive slope. And then we're going to repeat that process. Go up 1, right 3. Down 1, left 3. We're going to keep the pattern going in the other direction as well. So remember, we need at least 3 points. I put a lot more than 3 on there for you. Okay, remember, we can't just leave it as dots either. We have to connect our points because this is a continuous graph and everything in between our points is also part of the graph. And then the last thing you must do is put arrows on your line. Okay? All right. B. So for B, y equals negative 4x. So I need to ask myself, is y isolated? And yes, y is by itself in this equation. So then I can identify my slope and my y-intercept. So my slope is the number with the x, which is negative 4. So my line, when I graph it, needs to be going in this direction. And we could write this as negative 4 over 1 to help us with our rides over 1. Our y-intercept, there's nothing being added to the x. So our y-intercept is the point 0, 0. All right, so we're going to plot our y-intercept. Our y-intercept is at the origin, 0, 0. And now we're going to go rise 4. It's a negative slope, so we go left 1. Rise 4, left 1. Now if we go down 4, we must go right 1. Again, connect your points with a line and with arrows. Okay? Y equals 3. All right, so when I look at this, I think, something looks weird here. And hopefully you're seeing the same thing. So what's weird about this is that there's only one variable. So we know if we only see one variable, we have something special happening here. Okay? So to graph this line, I'm going to go on my y-axis because it is a y equals. So I'm going to go on my y-axis to 3. And then I'm going to draw a line straight through my y-axis. So what this is saying is that my y value always has to be 3. So I'm just going to check myself. I'm going to put a point right here. Well, this is the point 6, 3. My y value is 3, so I should be good. Let me check one more point. I'm going to check right here. So this is the point, negative 8, 3. Again, my y value is 3. So just by checking a couple other points, I can make sure I have the right line in there. My y value always has to be 3. All right? D, y equals x. So this is kind of a funny one. If I look at it, I notice, well, my y is by itself. So I know if my y is by itself, I can find my slope. I can find my y-intercept. Okay, so my slope here, well, what's the number in front of x? Well, when there's no number written, remember it's always just 1, right? We don't have to say when we're multiplying by 1. So it's going to be a positive slope going in that direction. My y-intercept, there's nothing being added, so my y-intercept is 0. So I plot my y-intercept, and then I'm going to go rise 1, run 1 to the right, 1 to the right, 1 to the right, down 1 to the left, down and to the left. Okay? Again, connect all your points with the line and with arrows. All right, let's make this a little bigger here. Why don't you try and do E on your own real quick, and I will put the answer up, and you can check your work as you go. But try this one on your own. See if you can graph this one by yourself. All right, so look up here, see if you got the right slope and the right y-intercept. If you got that correct, then go ahead and try and graph it. If you didn't get it correct, then correct it real quick. All right, now my line's up there, so you can go ahead and check your line. So a common mistake might have been that you went in the wrong direction. But again, it's a negative slope, so we need to rise and run left, or fall and run right. Okay. All right, so here for F. Ooh, again, I'm looking at this and I see something weird. See if you can figure out what's weird with this one. There's only one variable again, so we know if we only have one variable, it's special, right? So I'm going to go, this is an x equals, so I'm going to go on my x-axis to 6, and I'm going to draw a line straight through it. So again, I'm going to check my work real quick. I'm going to make sure. I'm going to put 2 points on here. I'm going to put a point here, I'm going to put a point here. So both of my points should have an x value of 6. Well, that one does, and that one does also. So I must have drawn the right line if my x value is always 6. All right, so this one looks a little bit different. This one doesn't have y by itself yet. So before we can graph this one, we first have to isolate our y. So I'm going to subtract my 2x from both sides. Y is equal to a negative 2x plus 3. So my y-intercept and my slope. Now that my y is by itself, I can identify that. So we have a negative 2 for our slope. We're going in the negative direction. And my y-intercept is 3. All right, so I'm going to graph my y-intercept first. On my y-axis, I'm going to go to 3. That's my first point. Then I'm going to use my slope. Remember, we can do over 1. So I'm going to rise 2 and run left 1 because it is a negative slope. And I'm just going to continue the pattern. Up 2, over 1, up 2, over 1, down 2, over 1. Right? All right, go ahead and try H on your own. I'll put the answer up here in just a second for you to check your work. But H, your first step is going to have to look like what you just did on G. Hi. Good.
We're just checking the wireless access points.
Oh.
See if they need to be replaced.
No, I think it's been fine.
You've got a new one.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thanks. All right, so we're going to subtract our 4x from both sides. Hopefully you've done this already. You weren't just waiting on me. Divide both sides by 2. So we get y equals negative 2x plus 5. So our y-intercept and our slope. Y-intercept is 5. Slope is negative 2. Again, go ahead and try and graph it without looking up here first. See if you can do it on your own. All right, so my y-intercept here is 5. Rise 2, run left 1. And your graph should look something like that. Okay, make sure you're making your points big enough that I can see them clearly. All right, so that's all for your notes. So for your homework tonight, you are working on pages 15 and 16. So that's what you're going to do now for the rest of class, and I will see you tomorrow.